Hi everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Deep Dives into TopBraid EVN, Collaborative Ontology Management. Our speakers today are Irene Polikoff. She's the CEO and co-founder at Top Quadrant. We also have Jack Sivak, who's the Senior Semantic Solutions Architect at Top Quadrant. So just a few logistical items before we get started today. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along by using your GoToWebinar controls. To post questions, please look on the right-hand side control panel. You should see a drop-down box for questions, and if you click on that box, you should be able to post your question at any time during the presentation. If we are running over, we will plan on staying on the line for 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the webinar to address a few questions. We will also be recording today's webinar, and we'll send a link to that recorded version. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jack to begin.
Thank you, Christy. So let's dive right in the interest of time. I'm going to talk at a fairly high level about what EVN can do for you and where it fits into ontology management. And then Irene will be showing you EVN's ontology management capabilities in action in a live demo. And at the end, as Christy mentioned, we'll have time for a few of your questions. So just a few words about the company, Top Quadrant. We're an enterprise information management company founded in 2001, and our business applications enhance information governance and leverage more value in existing information systems. Through a strong commitment to standard-based approaches to data semantics, we build practical but innovative solutions helping organizations manage complexity effectively. And our mission simply is to make enterprise information meaningful. So for those of you who are not familiar with our products, TopBraid EVN is a flexible multi-user solution for collaboratively managing different types of vocabulary models. It's web-based, so there's no need to install software on everyone's desktop. People log in, and it helps organizations get more value out of their data through governance, communication, and alignment of its meaning. It's often used as a taxonomy manager, but what we hope to show you in today's webinar is that TopBraid EVN can be used to manage and incorporate other types of models, even a mix of different types of models like ontologies, taxonomies, business glossaries, and crosswalks. So if you are familiar with EVN as a taxonomy manager, you'll notice that many of the same features that you use regularly are available for managing and interconnecting more general ontologies. There are also additional features that are unique to managing ontologies that Irene will be showing you in a moment. So before talking about EVN, I want to consider for a moment just what are ontologies and why are they important. And I'm going to distinguish them from taxonomies here because EVN is so often used for taxonomy management. Taxonomies are a very specific subset of ontologies that typically organize controlled vocabularies into a hierarchy of broader, narrower, and other terms commonly defined by the W3C standard SCOS ontology. Taxonomies are often used more narrowly than ontologies to enhance search, do data integration, and other projects where better management of these terms can lead to increased revenue. Ontologies, on the other hand, are more general and can model specific business or knowledge domains. They can very generally express critical relationships between things that are important in businesses. And because of this generality, ontologies can capture and expose more complex and useful knowledge about a particular business or technical domain. And it's exactly this knowledge that helps data and systems to interoperate effectively. And networks of such models can enable even more. These classes, relationships, and attributes in EVN can be either your own, they can come from published standards, or they can be a combination as descriptive schema, and they can also have associated data instances. So these ontologies aren't just academic, they're becoming important in many different industries and key to enabling critical business capabilities. The several that you see displayed here are particular ontologies that describe in a systematic and standardized way the key things and relationships that are typical to any endeavor in healthcare, financial services, or search. You see SNOMED in healthcare. Schema.org is used in web search services by Google and Microsoft and Yahoo, and FIBO is in financial services. The benefit here is that the meaning of this information is preserved across different endeavors and enterprises, enabling understanding, consistency, interoperability, reuse, and automation. So if increasingly organizations are using these ontologies, why is that? Well, the use is growing because of the benefits. As individuals, we need to get an understanding of the things that are important, and we need to maintain that understanding in order to use it. In organizations, the need is larger. We also need to share these understandings and execute effectively based on them. Gartner has described something that they call a modern information infrastructure as an enabling system of technologies that helps information producers and consumers organize, share, and exchange any type of data anywhere at any time. By building and collaboratively managing networks of vocabularies, EVN provides a key piece of this infrastructure. As a tool, EVN brings two special strengths to ontology management. First, it makes it easier to create these distributed networks that you see depicted on the right, and even a mix of different types of models, like ontologies or taxonomies, business glossaries. Second, with EVN, teams can manage these networks collaboratively with flexible, structured workflows where different members of the team have potentially different access levels for reading and writing, and also for deploying proposed changes. And EVN's simple interface puts this capability in the hands of the business stakeholders who need it the most. They need to collaborate on defining and linking enterprise ontologies, taxonomies, thesauri, and other vocabularies. So simply, how is this done? EVN enables users to govern, connect, and use ontologies. They can create, edit, search, and visualize RDFS or AL schemas and their associated data with a streamlined interface that's well suited for business use. They can connect classes within and between ontologies and other models, import them, and connect them with external systems. And finally, EVN's publication system makes these connected assets available for distribution within the organization. So what does its capability look like in practice? In just a moment, you'll see EVN manage a real-world example of an ontology I mentioned just a moment ago, the Financial Industry Business Ontology, or FIBO. The EDM Council is working on a discussed taxonomy version of FIBO, but it's not yet released. So what Irene will be demoing today is the currently released OWL Ontology version of FIBO. Several major banks have already started a FIBO early adopter program, and many more are planning to start one. Significantly, FIBO is published using one of the open standards that we support, so we were able to simply import their ontology right up into EVN, and you can see how it looks here in EVN's web-based ontology editor, which Irene will be showing you. We can import, edit, and link models, browse and explore the model for more understanding. You'll see her extend it with new attributes and relationships. We have rich collaborative management features she'll be showing you, and how to manage governance metadata about the model. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Irene. Irene?
Thank you, Jack. Let me share my screen. Okay. So one of the most fundamental capabilities that organizations need when they start adopting and using ontologies is being able to share and view them and provide this capability to both technical and business stakeholders. So what we see here in the screen, TopBraid EVN, on the left-hand side we see classes defined in the FIBO ontology, and it's a class 3 visit. We could extend it to see subclasses, and also under classes we see properties that are associated with them. So we could navigate through this structure. When we click on any of those items, we see it appear in a form here. So you see the textual definitions, logical definitions. You could also see for a class, like the class we're looking at now, what properties an instance of the class may take. And here I'm going into some of the features that are actually new to 5.1. We see here a convenient table that shows attributes which have literal values like strings and numerals, and also relationships. It's navigable. I could go back and forth and click here. Textual information is great, but many people want to see images and diagrams. And here we see a UML type of a diagram showing this class capital and how it connects to another class called money amount. Some stakeholders like this type of diagrams. Others, especially business folks, may find them a bit too technical. And another feature that we have is called neighborgram, that shows a slightly, less technical, friendlier view of the same information. So here you could see a similar information, but in the form of the diagram that is just shows connected bubbles and so on. It's also navigable, so we could click and navigate. There's also a quick lookup and search feature. So for example, if I want to go to the property called takes form, that shows up here, and we see the relationship that it has to classes in the ontology. So switching back to our ontology editor, I could also do a similar lookup in the class tree here. So let me look for a class I know called contract, and I just found it and was able to navigate to it. Now, beyond just navigating and looking around, the next important feature is being able to comment about the content of the ontology, record any questions or suggest changes and so on. EVN provides that feature. You could see here an icon that will show you any comments if they exist, and will also allow you to add new comments. So here we see that a couple of comments were already entered. It supports sort of a discussion, and the comments can be associated with individual class or property, or they could be at the level of ontology itself, and you could view it at the granular level or as a report at everything that has been entered. As we could see here, another user, Jane Smith, suggested that we may need an additional property for contract. So as we receive a comment like that, as someone on the editorial staff receives a comment like that, they may want to check, does a similar property already exist? We've already seen a lookup capability that requires you to start typing the name. Now here we want to look for any property that may have a date in it. So to do that, there is a handy search form that allows a richer search over classes or properties. So let me see any property that has a date in its name. And as you could see, I found a few, and I could check and see if any of them, if execution date already exists, for example. So that's very handy, and of course I could also navigate to search results. Now, beyond just looking and so on, this is of course a multi-user collaborative editing environment, and I could extend Fiber. By the way, what I'm looking at here is my own version of a model called Fiber Demo. In it, I've included Fiber that has been produced by the EDM Council. This way, I could add information to it, I extend it, but I would not be able to change anything that's provided by the standard body. So if I, for example, I clicked on the edit here, you see that I cannot change the definition. I could add another definition, but I could not change the existing one. So let me just quickly type something and save change. Every change that made here is audit trail, and I could see a history of it. As you could see, any additions, any modifications, deletions, I could revert them. I could see this information at the level of individual resource or class in this case. Or I could also, there's also available a report that allows users to see change history for the entire ontology. So that's kind of handy in a collaborative environment as well, where there are different users who are making changes. Now you see that in addition to textual definition, there is more logical type of definition here that those of you who are familiar with OWL web ontology language will recognize this as Manchester syntax for OWL expressions. And another new feature in 5.1 is that you could use this Manchester syntax to add your own OWL expressions. So this web-based tool supports OWL editing using this, pretty intuitive type of syntax. So let me now add, I could add a new class here, or I could add a new property. And for this exercise, I'm gonna add a new property. Let's call it contract identifier, just to demonstrate how this is done. I could add either an attribute, which is a data type property, and this is what I'm doing here, and make it range string and save. Or using this icon, I could have added a relationship between two classes, a link. So we've just talked about doing various expressions using OWL. Well, OWL has a lot of richness, but there are some things that you may want to add to the ontology that's over and above OWL capabilities. Some business rules for data validation and so on. For that, EVN supports something called SPIN. SPIN is a RDF-based standard for defining data rules, and it's currently being standardized as part of the W3C RDF data shapes effort. Just to show you an example, let's say I want to say that the contract identifier needs to be between 3 and 4 characters. And the way to do that, I'll click here on the constraint, and there are a number of templates that pre-built templates that we ship as a product that are available. One of them is deals with a number of characters in the property. So let me select this one, and that gives me an easy to fill out template. So I could start typing here, contract identifier, for example, must be between 3 and 4 characters in length. And I save and created that rule. Another rule that I could have used if I've created a property called execution date, I could have said that it must be less than effective date. So it's another example of the rule that I may enter. And I'm going to show a little bit later, as when we start adding data, this rule will fire and give me a warning if the contract identifier doesn't correspond to it. So we've seen now viewing ontologies. We've done a little bit on editing. We've seen some commenting. Another capability that is important in terms of collaboration is management of different roles and their access that will view and add information to this model. So here, if we click on the model name, we'll see what we call a home page for the model that provides access to different additional features. One of them is user roles. I have a few users defined here, and I could give them privileges. TopBraid EVN, by the way, integrates with LDAP, so you could use it for single sign-on and management of users and roles through LDAP. Another handy information here is in this tab called Metadata, where you could see I could add information about the ontology itself, its name, purpose, version, and so on. And all of this information is entirely configurable. It's model-driven, so if your organization needs a different set of information, it could be added. There's also something called governance or RACI metrics that allows us to specify parties, roles, organizations, users that are responsible, accountable, or need to be informed about changes in the ontology. So RACI metrics is then drives notifications that you could see can be configured in this management console. Another handy feature is, by the way, we could customize forms for different classes. So that becomes important when you start entering data that corresponds to this ontology schema. One more feature I want to point out is usage. As we develop ontologies, they are developed so they could be used in various systems. And to record what system uses a given ontology, we could create a usage record. And there we could say that ontology is used in some system. We could talk about, what period of time it's used in. We could capture various nodes. We could also say how often that system is updated, which way is it updated, through web services, through file exports, and so on. This all is also configurable. Again, it's all model-driven. And in terms of web services, TopBraid EVN is a service-based product, uses a services architecture. So all the information you see here is available through web services, and many of the activities, such as posting comments, importing, exporting, even driving data validation, and pretty much most of the features are available through web services. So with that, let me now talk about instances or data that corresponds to ontologies. So far the fiber model is primarily about classes and properties, but I could also create a model or a data set that captures actual instances of the classes in the model. So let me do that as an example. I'm doing it as an ontology as well, but it could be a data set. We have a number of other type of vocabularies that we support, but for simplicity purposes, let me create something that I'm going to call contract data. And I've just created a new ontology. Okay, and we see that showing up. I'm going to include fiber in it. So let me do that, as simple as that. And now as I edit it, we could see the class tree that we've already seen before, but I'm going to go to my class contract, and I'm going to create a new instance of a contract just to show you how we would work with data. So let me do something like example contract. Okay. And that creates a new instance. And the fields that you see here are those that are defined in the model, applicable to the contract. I'm going to save the change and go back into it to edit it to show you an example of data validation rule at work. So let me enter as a contract identifier, let's say A1, and here we'll see that my constraint was violated, and I've got a message saying that it must be between 3 and 4 characters. So with that, let me turn back to Jack, who will highlight a few of the other features that I didn't get a chance to cover in this demo. Jack, over to you.
Thanks very much, Irene. So Irene's presented a number of features, and to summarize, the benefits of these features provide support for collaboration. There's the role-based access that you saw and the communication among the different users. Provides a business-friendly UI so that you can add these definitions and business rules. And finally, she mentioned but didn't demonstrate that you can deliver these automatically to other enterprise applications. You saw a little bit of working between parties, how you can take a comment and edit it. We want to just name, without going into any detail here, that there's an enormous amount of flexibility in EVN for workflow support. Working copies can be made which allow you to edit without damaging what's already in production. These can be reviewed and frozen for changes and release. Finally, the integration takes place with other systems. Quite simply, we have a very rich support for multi-format imports. You can also integrate by directly using RDF through a fully compliant SPARQL 1.1 endpoint and an API that benefits with automated web service creation and a rich library of standard web service calls. So I'm not going to read through this whole slide. The information is available on our website about the various capabilities of EVN, and that concludes the presentation portion of today's webinar. Christy?
Thank you, Irene, and thank you, Jack. That brings us to the part of our webinar where we take your questions. If you haven't already, please submit your questions and discussion points in the question box on the right-hand side control panel. So I've already been tracking some questions here. We'll go with this first question, which is, in TopBraid EVN, how can resources such as classes, properties, and instances in one ontology be linked to respective resources in another ontology? Irene?
Thanks, Christy. Yes, I think we've seen some of it in the demo earlier, where I've created one ontology and included it in another. And in my example, what I did, I've created an instance, but I could actually have been, and I was doing it earlier, I could have been creating properties and classes, and in doing so, I would be making them subclasses of the ontologies I included. So that creates a connection between classes and properties. That's one common use of common way to create connections between models. Where you have instances, we have a support for something called crosswalks. That's building crosswalks or correspondence between instances is pretty common, for example, between ICD-9 and ICD-10 and other vocabularies of that type. And crosswalk provides a good support for linking across.
Great, thank you, Irene. Let's take question number 2. We'll try to grab a couple more questions before we sign off today. Can you use ontologies and taxonomies together within TopBraid EVN? Irene, do you want to take that one as well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And for example, basically you could include any model into any other model. But for example, with taxonomies in TopBraid EVN, they are based on SCAS, so you already have pre-built things like SCAS concept and associated properties. But often people want to extend those, and let's say you have a taxonomy of geographical entities, and in addition to scarce concept, you may want to have subclasses such as, you know, cities, regions, and so on, and create some properties specific to them. So one option is to do that directly in the taxonomy, but a better practice is to actually create an ontology extending scarce, and then create a taxonomy and include that ontology into it. So yeah, you could have any combination of models as you need.
Great. Let's take this question. How long is change history kept?
Well, actually, there's no limit. Change history can be there as long or as much as you want to, but as you use the environment, in some cases you may want to start archiving changes after a while. And TopBraid EVN provides archiving feature. So this is really up to the user.
Great. Thank you, Irene. And to respect everyone's time, I think we're going to wrap up. And if we weren't able to get to your questions, and there were several that we could not get to today, we will be following up with responses to your questions via email, so stay tuned for that. And we certainly hope you found this information valuable, and as mentioned earlier in the presentation, a copy of the slide deck and webinar recording will be sent to you in the next couple of weeks. And we're also going to include a link to our new FIBO browser. So pay attention for that to come soon. Thank you for everyone for your attention and interest in today's webinar, and have a great day.